Watch out in the crowd. It's coming your way. Bang, bang, 6-6. Fabulous innings, fabulous game. Fantastic tournament.
Welcome to the first episode of what we hope is going to be a series. Listen, if the Springboks bid for a World Cup was called Chasing the Sun, what are we calling the Proteas?
Chasing a decent...
Burnt by the sun.
chasing a decent pitch.
Yeah, this is the first one we hope is going to be a series. It might just be one, and if it is, enjoy it. But we hope it's going to be a series. And there's only one talking point. I've brought Mark Keohane in. It's a shameless aim for engagement. I don't have Zalz's beard, and neither do I have his hairline. But hopefully I know a little bit about cricket. And so we've brought Mark in for engagement and numbers and for his cricket knowledge. And the only talking point is a WhatsApp debate that we had last night around this pitch in New York. And my perspective was that... So my perspective has always been that cricket needs to be a fair contest between bat and ball. And the IPL was, let's say, on the left of that spectrum, where the wickets were just roads, batters were just swinging through the line, scores of 260 were par and being chased down regularly. And that wicket, if we can call it that, in New York is on the other end of the spectrum. It was nearly impossible to bat on, even for the Proteas. Your perspective, Mark, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that that was a better contest, a cricketing contest, than what we experienced in the IPL, and this is why we're here today.
Yeah. So disclaimer. I mean, I'm cricket tragic. I was schooled with Test cricket. Enjoyed the initial stages of ODIs till Hansa Cronje came along. I lost faith in that. Always thought T20 was a bit of hit and giggle, as many did back then. Kind of started to take to it. Enjoyed the column you wrote a couple of weeks ago, where it kind of changed a lot the way I was looking at T20 during the IPL. Like, it's not a game of cricket as you know it. It's a completely different sporting code and different skill sets, which kind of made me appreciate the IPL a little bit more, because I was looking at those nuances and not the nuances of this isn't cricket as I know it.
Right.
But from that cricketing perspective, I really found that contest, Sri Lanka against the Proteas, to be quite absorbing and to be quite riveting, because it was once again a contest between bat and ball, but also minds. And it needed something to break that game. And Klaasen's 6 and 4, which in the context of how he's been playing in the IPL, 10 runs of 2 balls, it's like that was significant because the momentum was starting to slip away from the Proteas. Now, those are the conversations I would usually have around Test cricket. So there'd be this great spell from a Dale Steyn to a Tendulkar, a Donald to a Tendulkar, or a Shane Warne to one of our players who stuck around long enough back then to play him. And you would think that's going to be decisive in the outcome of this match, that 30 minutes that the guy didn't get out, or that strike bowler who came back and took a decisive wicket. And I just found myself feeling I was watching a game of cricket and just not watching a head and giggle, 25 sixes, 36s, 34s, watching a bloke double step one of the best fast bowlers in the world and heading for the equivalent of a 12. I know it's a drop in pitch, but I'm talking more the context of what went into the game. And as a viewer, I really felt I enjoyed watching that. Watching Sri Lanka try to defend 75 and thinking there's a chance here if the Proteas lose one more and they go 5 down when we got to 52 for 4, there's a chance here that we may actually struggle. And that outfield obviously is not great. It looked like it was like when I used to bowl into the southeast, it looked like that, slow.
That was a grassy knoll in close to uptown New York, that they just built a stadium on and dropped a pitch in, and it looked every bit that yesterday.
And the drop in pitches, again, we don't know how they're going to play or Is it going to become more batsman?
I think we know exactly how they're going to play.
Is it going to become more batter friendly after like 3 weeks of playing on it?
It's going to get worse.
It's going to be like the fifth day.
It's 40 degrees Celsius in New York. The sun is baking that thing as we speak, and it's going to get drier, slower, and harder to bat on. I hear your point, and it's a point that was shared by a lot of people on Twitter, actually. And but my perspective is that the IPL has scarred us so badly that people accept that a wicket like is present in New York is an acceptable, almost antithesis to what was on show at the IPL. And I get that completely. I get that people want a better contest. People want to see bowlers in the game. And I do too. But my argument to you was, and like if South Africa had been skittled for, or South Africa, if South Africa had been playing Australia, for example, South Africa roll Australia for 77. There's a contest happening in that game in a way that Sri Lanka couldn't mount yesterday. I just think their bowling attack technically couldn't exploit what was in that wicket to the same extent that an Australian attack could, for example. I just felt like the Sri Lankans, that low arm action of all of the seamers didn't really get the bounce out of the wicket that you would if with a more traditional or conventional type action. And so I think the result masks a bigger problem. Because if South Africa had been playing Australia, South Africa had been playing England, the West Indies, anyone with a really decent pace attack, 77 is defendable on that thing. And then I don't know if we're having the same conversation.
Then we're talking about a snake pit.
Yeah, exactly.
As you said.
Exactly.
Look, I'm talking from just a pure, as I said, cricket tragic. Watching that and actually enjoying it. I know it's not going to sell the game of cricket to the American audience because what they want to see is 25 sixes and 34s in a game, and they want to see that ball flying out the park. So an IPL type situation would sell it to a new audience there, although I don't even think the Americans know it's happening. What you have is Americans with a cricketing background who have either been born in America, second generation, so they're from India or the West Indies, and so there's cricket in their blood as such.
Yeah, and South Africans. I've got friends that work in New York that went to the games because there is a cricketing heritage in our country. Yeah.
So again, we may be going like a little bit off topic here, but taking it to New York, taking it into the States, I would understand if they could be guaranteed the 240, 250 plus scores that made everyone rave about the IPL and talk about the incredible batting techniques of players and players who can come in and they can basically do anything that they would never be able to do in traditional cricket. And the bowler was just, he's got to get through 6 balls if he can and just know if he can go for anything under 10 and over, he's done well. Yesterday was just like a throwback to watching some of those very difficult early on ODIs that were played on underprepared tracks, where you kind of strike rates. When I looked at one stage and Tristan Stubbs was batting with Klaasen and with Quinton de Kock, and the strike rates were 45 and 25, and it's like to me it was just okay. Let's see what you've got technique wise, which is not necessarily the same thing as what you said in your column. Appreciate these guys, these batters for what they do in the IPL because it's a completely different game they're playing and the way they have to play to get those runs. But for someone who's going to be following this World Cup for the next month, I didn't want to see 250 plus every time. I actually wanted to see bowlers in the game. I wanted to see 4 for 7 in 4.
Yeah.
I wanted to see 5 for 9 in 4. It just kind of felt like if someone does get a big one there in New York, they can play.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, so yeah. And look, I was delighted that the Proteas won. It's the first time since 2012 that they've won an opening game at a T20 World Cup. So that was one we can put down. We do know We got the big danger coming on the weekend. We got those orange monsters.
Nederlands.
The Nederlands is always coming to do us. Eh?
They are to the Proteas
I'm like
what
half Portuguese, half Dutch there.
and my accents are not as good as Zal's either. But they are to the Proteas what Crystal Palace is to Liverpool. They can't seem to get one over them. And they've lost in 2 consecutive World Cups now. The one they cost Mark Boucher his job. And now Rob Walter is in the crosshairs of the Netherlands.
But if you look at that Netherlands team, I mean, they're a club side, okay? They wouldn't win the domestic league, club league here in Cape Town. Now, player for player, not one of those players would ever be picked ahead of what's playing for the Proteas. But they go out, and the beauty of cricket is, on the day, psychologically, they kind of do something to us.
Yeah. And I think we're speaking about this pitch now, and there's no question that this pitch gets harder to bat on as the tournament progresses. Well, what does that mean now in the context of that Netherlands game and the games that follow that? Because the Proteas play 3 of their 4 pool games on the snake pit. And then they go to the West Indies to play Nepal in their last pool game. And I think the toss becomes critical now. Like, I don't know what Sri Lanka was doing when they looked at that wicket and they went like, yeah, we'll have a bat on this thing.
I think Nepal becomes critical because by the time we get to the West Indies, it's like, is this a pitch?
Yeah.
And we saw what happened in those warm-up games in the West Indies. It didn't go too well for us.
Yeah.
So just we may have mastered the mindset of playing traditional cricket.
Yeah.
We're going to be needed to play a bit more IPL when we go there.
Yeah.
So it's a massive challenge for all players involved to be playing in 2 different countries, and one where there's not a national cricketing culture. It's very niche, and then on dropping pitches. Mm-hmm. So it also, when do you get a gauge of form? Because you're not necessarily going to be accurate.
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
You may find the guy who's doing well because of the dropping pitches as a bowler gets to the West Indies and just travels.
Yeah.
Travels miles.
Yeah.
So all in all, though, it's making for one hell of an exciting month because it's not predictable.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing that for me the IPL became predictable. And then the irony was after all the 250s and 260s, the final 110 they were skiddled was chased down in 10 overs. So they finally got a bit of a snake pit there and it was all over.
Yeah.
You know? So it's again, there's interest. I don't look at any of the schedule and think that's a gimme.
Yeah.
I'm like, even yesterday, Afghanistan, Uganda, you never know. Okay, Afghanistan, it's been played in the West Indies, they won comfortably, but you look at the rest and you just think, the match in Dallas where the USA came back and won like that.
Yeah.
Here I'm watching Canada play the USA and been quite intrigued.
Yeah.
Papua New Guinea take the West Indies down to the last over, even
Yeah.
though it's their reserve, a lot of their reserve players that they played. Yeah. So that hasn't happened in previous World Cups. You've had the Netherlands or Ireland come in and poxy in a win. But the conditions have just been such a leveler, and I love it.
And I think we've got to kind of shift our benchmark as to what constitutes a good performance, like a strong performance from a batter. For example, you raised the issue of those 2, Klaasen pumping Asaranga for 6 and a 4 down the ground yesterday. In the context of a normal T20 match, that's expected. But in the context of yesterday's game on that wicket, that innings was critical for us. And I think what we're going to see in the pool phase, certainly our interest is with the Proteas. Strike rates of 60, 70, 80 being commonplace and good enough, And I just think there's going to be a mindset shift. Or there has to be a mindset shift about what constitutes a good innings. Like yesterday, Stubbs, that was a good innings. Klaasen was a good innings in the context of the match, and that's going to be commonplace.
I want to put this one to you, going back to that column you wrote again, and for those who haven't read it, go on to SA Cricket Magazine, where Ryan spoke about he sees T20 in a very not too distant future not really been seen as cricket. It's a different code, different kind of skill sets, different specialities in terms of batting, bowling, and even fielding. Now you've got blokes who have really advanced that kind of game. That's all they play. And they come for their countries and they play in a T20 World Cup in these kind of conditions. The technique that they require from first-class cricket to navigate those kind of battles, the patience that they may need to still bat at 6, 7, 8 and over, which could be doable. How many of them are going to be found wanting in this environment?
Right.
And where does that?
Yeah.
Where does? I mean, what's your thought on that?
So I think some of the players yesterday were exposed a little bit for technique. So Riza, I don't know if you'd seen that, but Hendricks was actually dropped earlier, and his first scoring shot was like uppish through the gully to get off the mark. And so, you know, Hendricks is a good player. But there's a couple of those players in that Proteas side that their technique is really going to be exposed and tested. I completely agree with you that there's an element of resilience and mental kind of fortitude that's going to come into it that might be even more important, certainly more important than like technical brilliance. And that's intriguing for me. I agree with you on that point. I don't shift from my stance that cricket needs to be a fair contest between bat and ball. But that's a debatable point. You know, like that's in many ways that's subjective. What is a fair contest? But I agree with you. I think the mental resilience is going to become so much more critical, particularly in this pool phase, happening on those drop-in pitches. Around the USA.
I think going back to your fair contest is that you want to give the bowler a hint that if the bowler bowls well, there's a good chance of wicket-taking options or a reduced run rate. And if a batsman doesn't bat well, they're not going to score. The reverse for me has been, especially we go back to the IPL, is there were occasions where batsmen didn't bat particularly well, but they were still scoring at a strike rate of close to 200 and getting close to 50 or in excess of 50. And because of the tracks they were on, it didn't matter who the bowler was. You had some big names going for 50 in 4 overs. Yeah. Going for 32 in 2 overs. You know, so you see a Mitchell Starc, how he bowled in that final, where the wicket did something. To how he had bowled in some previous matches, where he just... there was just nothing in it. Yeah. To trouble the batsman who could just go on the front foot 2 steps down. I think he's playing on the N1. So I keep on going back to that point. That's what I loved about just watching this. It became a bit of a thinking person's game again, and not just who's got the best eye, who can take a double step down. Right. And the bowlers know they're going to travel for 8 to 10, maybe 12 runs and over. Yeah. And it's 250 plays 245, which is exciting when it comes down to that last over. But over and above that, how exciting is it to watch 36s being hit or 34s being hit in an innings? I'm asking you that. Do you find it exciting, or is it a different occasion that you just got to accept? That's where the game of T20 is.
No, I don't find that. I don't find that exciting, and again, because it's not a fair contest. I think if a scenario where say 18 sixes are hitting in innings, and in the wicket there's something for both batter and bowler, and someone is coming down the wicket to Mitchell Starc and flicking them over mid-wicket for 6, having to engineer a 6-hitting opportunity like that. I think that for me is the beauty of T20 cricket. But we're speaking in many ways, we're speaking hypotheticals because the game has been geared towards batters. And I think that is something that we're going to have to become used to. I think T20 cricket in South Africa is a fairer contest. T20 cricket in Australia is a fairer contest. England, I think, skews towards an IPL type scenario. But depending on weather conditions, etc. If that thing is swinging, then it's a fairer contest. But yeah, I don't enjoy 36s in an innings, but I also don't enjoy 12 sixes in an innings.
Or 6-4s.
Or 6-4s. And I think it's a fairer contest. But I think there's a broader conversation that, you know, like these drop-in pitches just haven't worked. I mean, in his post-match yesterday, Andrich Nokia spoke about the challenge of just his run-up, getting his run-up right. Because there's a little ridge where the thing has been dropped in. It completely messes up his run-up. And he hasn't enjoyed playing on dropping pitches at any stage of his career. And, I mean, we both played cricket on, like, community cricket fields where the thing has been built up over so many years that there's sometimes a little slope before you get to the wicket. And you can imagine that a ridge for an elite fast bowler is a nightmare. And so I think there's and that is one of the smaller issues around drop-in pitches. The ICC were on the PR offensive in the lead up to this World Cup around these drop-in pitches. I've lost count of how many videos I saw around the production process of this wicket, how it was brought over from Australia, grown in Florida. And then I see it in a tweet yesterday, it looked like...
Died in New York.
It looked like they transported it at the back of the truck all the way from Florida to New York. That's how that thing was playing. But these drop-in wickets aren't good for cricket, in my view. Aren't good for the fair contest. You cannot produce a fair contest on a drop-in pitch that has been artificially engineered. It's just impossible. And then the climate in New York right now is going to make it worse.
We all get the expansion of everyone wants to take the traditional non-American sports in to the States. The Rugby World Cups go in there. It took Messi to transform domestic soccer over there, one of the great icons of the game. Does this do cricket a disservice or a service, taking T20, because it's the only format they can sell to that American audience, because it's fast, balls are flying everywhere, it's a bit like baseball on roids.
Yeah.
Does it take it back again, or does it promote it? Because you don't see big crowds there. I haven't in the couple of games I've seen so far.
14,000 yesterday, and at the South Africa Sri Lanka match, and like you said, the majority of those were immigrants to the US, and I think. You know, the USA's interest and knowledge of cricket was summed up in whoever that commentator was that they had with Dale Steyn having to explain cricket to him, the fundamentals of cricket, let alone T20 cricket and the nuances that come with that. So to answer your question, I don't think it does cricket a great service. I think the T20 game in its more familiar form happens in the playoff stage, that happens on wickets in the West Indies that are more predictable. They will be slow and low, but they're more predictable than what you'd find in the drop-in pitches in the USA. And then, then that becomes an advert for cricket, but that's not happening in the USA. That's happening outside of the country, and then you ask yourself, oh, what's the point then? But I don't think cricket, there's this obsession with expanding the game. And sometimes I ask myself, do we really need to? I understand the commercial appeal of expanding into an American market. I completely get that. But at what cost and to what end? I don't know if cricket is ever going to take off in the US. And I don't think it will. There's so many other sports that are geared towards the audience's sensibilities and what they expect from elite level sport, that I just don't see it. I don't see it happening.
But again, we go back to playing in all the T20 leagues across the world, playing for a franchise, playing for a club side. Then you get an international T20, and it looks like it's a completely different game again.
Yeah.
Because of the drop-in pitches, or because of playing in two different countries.
Yeah.
I keep on going back to. I'm loving it as an oldie and someone who grew up with a very different version of cricket. But how does that? I keep on going back to how does it then serve the person who only wants to know T20 because of the occasion, 2 hours of just spanking that ball everywhere, having a great festival, a carnival, and then going home and not really caring about run rates, strike rates. It's just being out and really having a good time with your mates.
Yeah.
So, and I think that would appeal more to that American market than, because you'd have to understand the nuances of cricket.
Absolutely. And I think that's why the conversation that we're having around these wickets are so important in the context of the question around expanding the game into the US, because what you're presenting to them is not really a traditional T20 game. That is not the form a T20 game takes traditionally. And yes, T20s are played on dicey pitches around the world. There's dicey pitches in Australia. There's certainly dicey pitches in Cape Town at Newlands.
That was a fifth day test wicket in Delhi.
Right, exactly.
And you got to chase down 80 to win, and you don't know if you're going to do it.
Right.
And I love that. I absolutely love that.
So the form of the game that we're presenting to this American audience is completely different to what a standard T20 game looks like. And I think this is where the ICC have dropped the ball. Like if your express intent was to expand, especially this form of the game, to make this form of the game appealing to a US market, then you've got to do everything in your power to ensure that the product is good, because you don't get a second chance. You don't get a second chance. For that audience, you're not getting a second chance.
Would it be one of the great ironies that the underachieving Proteas, who have gone to so many World Cups, be it ODIs, T20s, as one of the favorites, that they find their soul in dropping pitches in New York?
Right?
Eh?
Right.
Their dreams are made of, baby, in New York. Eh? That's where the Proteas come of age.
Because it
finally win us
South
something.
African psyche, right? Like, we're going to grind this thing down here. We're going to chase this 77 in 15 overs or whatever it was. It speaks to that South African, like, resilience and, like, we're going to do this. The odds are against us. It would be hilarious if that happened.
We just got to get past those orange monsters on the weekend, because I remember when Gary Kirsten was playing, so it was that era, went on the big tour of the UK, 5 test matches or 4 test matches, then the one ODIs. Then they went to The Hague and they played Holland on a mat. They lost by, I think, 9 wickets or something like that. I couldn't believe it. So they've beaten us on a mat. They've beaten us on normal pitches. I just don't want to do us on a dropping pitch.
Yeah. And we're going to speak in more detail about the Netherlands, and then we've got Bangladesh. So we've got Netherlands coming up on Thursday, and we've got Bangladesh on Saturday, and we'll speak in more detail.
And then
about
Nepal when we go to the West Indies.
Then
I want to ask you, because we've chatted about this often in the build-up to this. The starting 11 that went out yesterday, is that the one that you think can win us this title? Is it the best one in terms of balance?
I didn't before I saw that wicket. I didn't. I thought we should have played 2 spinners. So initially, because Walter in the lead up to the World Cup said that his top 4 was going to be Reza Hendricks, Quinny de Kock, Ryan Vrede, and Aiden Markram. I was then, like, trying to figure out, okay, what happens below that. So we're going to pick Andy Klaas and we're going to pick David Miller. Then I was trying to figure out what's going to happen with Tristan Stubbs. Are we going to pick him and then go with, like, four specialist bowlers and risk one traveling all over the place, and then you got to look at Aiden Markram or somebody else in the mix to bowl you 4 or 3 overs or 2 overs, whatever the case may be. But looking at the team they picked yesterday on that wicket, that for me is exactly the right team that they should go with for the rest of the matches in New York.
Okay.
I don't know what the wicket in British Island is going to play like, but certainly for these New York decks, that is the team they should pick. I thought Bartman was excellent yesterday. His control, he was just a perfect foil to the seamers that were really attacking and looking to strike. And
Do you not feel there's a bit, and it's a compliment from me to Barton, there's a lot of Vern Philander in him?
absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot of Vern Philander in him. His control, his tactical IQ, his ability to assess conditions really quickly and then to adapt his game to those conditions. He was excellent yesterday. He was excellent, and he wasn't excellent in isolation. Like I said, the impact that he had, there's a reason Nokia was able to go at batters like that all the time, to bowl that hard length all the time and go at batters. There was a reason that Rabada was able to do that. There was a reason that Keshav was able to be more attacking than he has been traditionally. Traditionally, he's not been a strike bowler for South Africa. He's held up one end, he's choked the runs, and then his partner bowling on the other end has been allowed to go for it.
I mean, you talk about that control, 21 dot balls, which is a record at a T20 World Cup. It beats Roach's 20. And then between the two of them, Nokia and Bartman, they both completed their 4 overs and conceded less than 10 runs. It's never been done. It's been done. I think it's the best, but it's only ever been done 3 times. But
Right.
they kind of aggregate the best. So, from a confidence point of view, and I listened to Nokia speak afterwards. Fantastic interview. I couldn't believe his English was so good. The guy from Uitenhage, Uitenhage. So it was the more impressive than his bowling. Was just such a fluent English kind of interview. I was highly impressed. So congrats on that one. Nou moet jy Afrikaans praat.
Yeah.
But it was just seeing the confidence he got from not doubting himself, because he said he wasn't playing well in the warm-up games. He was just flying, going for plenty. I mean, that first one against the West End is the faster he bowled, the further he went.
Yeah.
But he is a genuine 150-plus bowler.
Yeah.
Like, you go to the IPL, some guys I never see clocking 135 in a test match or on an ODI. They at the 151. I think when they turn that one up. But he is a genuine, and like he said, he hits the deck hard, but on dropping pitches, it's like a tennis ball effect. So he actually didn't quite know what he's going to get out of it. But I think there was that uneven bounce as well, because you see how he got his wickets as well. He was banning them in.
Well, but
outcome, it wasn't true. You know?
The outcome. So we needed Nokia to find some form and some confidence somehow. I didn't know how that was going to happen, but then, but he got there. Even though it was on the back of, of a wicket that was really, really helpful. He's got there now. His confidence is up. And when he goes to the West Indies, assuming we make it through the pool phase and that those giants from Nederland don't disrupt the party, he takes that confidence into the playoffs, into the super round in the West Indies. He takes that confidence with him. I didn't know how we were going to get there, how Nokia was going to get there, but he's there. He's there now.
And if you take, a lot of talk beforehand, and that we potentially, this is in this format of cricket, and it could even be transferred to ODIs, that a Miller Klaasen or Klaasen Miller Stubbs, you bat them in 4, 5, 6, 5, 6, 7, that is the most powerful hitting trio we've probably ever had at international level. Would you say that's fair, or is it kind of we're forgetting the past?
No question. There's no question. And the fact that there's a left hand in that trio makes him even more so, more potent. And so there's no question. I can't think of the history of South African white ball cricket where we've had the spine of the batting lineup be that potent. And I think what the range of skills that they possess is what makes them so. So Klaasen, this is up for debate, but I'm not sure we've had a better player of spin in the middle order than Klaasen in white ball cricket. Certainly, yesterday, Asaranga decided to throw 2 up to him, and that looked easy, but that wicket was turning. It's slow turn, so your timing has to be impeccable there. But just the execution of that shot was just like, this guy's on a different level against spin. Miller's ability to hit sweepers when he needs to. If he comes in a situation where a rebuild is necessary, Miller's ability to hit sweepers and then to transition into a power hitting game is unbelievable. And then Stubbs we saw in the IPL, and again, that's not the full measure of the player, but you can only judge him on what the conditions that were presented to him. And he definitely, I think he averaged 52 in the IPL or something like that, at a strike rate of in excess of 120. And so he's maturing into a unbelievable finisher. And so I don't think we've ever had a better trio.
Where, if you look at the squad dynamic, who breaks into that? Who breaks into that 11 if outside of, say, playing an additional spinner, okay?
Yeah.
Who breaks into it, or is it basically going to be carrying drinks for a month if none of these guys go down, and this is the most settled and consistent 11 that we can put out?
I don't see any batter breaking into that. I think there's concern around Rickerton's technique on wickets that are doing a bit. So he batted well in the SA20, and then subsequent to that as well. But those were generally on wickets that were quite predictable, that weren't doing a lot of the seam and very little through the air. I think there's concern around his technique on wickets particularly wickets that are a little bit slower. We saw that in the West Indies. He couldn't adapt. And I think he's a good player, but I think he needs more time. I think this World Cup has come maybe a year too early for him. I think he needs to be in the squad, in the broader squad, because he's a player worth investing in. But right now there's some concern around his technique. But beyond that, I don't see anyone breaking into the side outside of, like I said, if they wanted to pick an extra spinner, which I think should be Fontaine, then it would become a toss-up between, do we sacrifice Jansen or do we sacrifice Stubbs, or Miller? But I think Klaasen is untouchable. So do we sacrifice Miller or do we sacrifice Stubbs? And I think they're always going to sacrifice Stubbs because Miller gives them a left-hand hitting option down the order. And so, but beyond that, I don't see anyone breaking into that.
If you go back to previous T20s, you look at players like AB de Villiers, Faf du Plessis. We've had some outstanding individuals, bowling and batting, and gone to tournaments with a lot of hype. What sets this 11, this squad apart from those that they have been so hyped, this one, that the potential is there for them to actually win it?
I don't think anything sets this one apart. I've been quite clear in my opinion that India, Australia, England and West Indies are the semi-finalists in this tournament. So
thanks for that, but enjoy the month.
But I don't think anything sets this team apart. They're just a team with a lot of potential, like any South African team that's gone to the World Cup. Let's not forget that they lost 7 of 9 coming into the World Cup. So they're not an elite T20
They weren't played in New York, baby.
And that changes a lot. So I think with this attack, they're absolutely running through teams in New York, particularly if they win the toss and they bowl at them first. And then they got to scratch for a 80 or a 90 there, which is never going to be easy on that deck. But I don't think anything sets this team apart. They've got a lot of potential. They've got a lot of tools at their disposal. But I just think that the 4 teams that I've mentioned are ahead of them from a skills, personnel, mentality perspective. So they for me are exactly the same as those great Proteas squads that we've sent to previous World Cups.
They never quite made it.
No.
So what's going to convince you otherwise that Adam Markham and his boys could be spoken about as potential semi-finalists? So
when it gets, I'd like to see how they play in the West Indies in that super round against like elite opposition. If they take out one of those 4 that I've mentioned in those super rounds, if they win 2 or 3 of those games, then you can go like, okay, then now you need to put it together for 2 matches, a semi-final and a final. And can you do that? And so if there's a favorable draw, When I say favourable draw, I think of like, do we get the West Indies in the semi-final? Because West Indies have, that's like one of those teams that you look at and you go like, we can beat them because they've got a collapse in them at some point, and we can beat the West Indies in a semi-final. Then it becomes hard, but I think if they start to put it together in that super round and they look like a competent unit with a broad skill set in that round, then I'd start to go like, okay, like there's a chance here, but I don't think that's going to happen.
And India on tracks like the West Indies, so different to what they've played on in the IPL.
Yeah.
Are they as vaunted there, or is there the potential for vulnerability just because of the nature of the conditions?
I think that they've got the bowling attack to put teams under a lot of pressure, especially if they win the toss and they bat first, so they get the best of the conditions. So if you look at, like Jadeja, Yadav, Bumrah, Siraj, their bowling attack is like elite and able to exploit conditions like you'd find in the West Indies. And so I think that's why I think India are a big threat in the tournament, and that's why I think they'll make the semis.
Yeah, you look at the strength of their squad. You just have to look who's not there to know just how potent they are.
Imagine we had the luxury of leaving Shubman Gill out of a World Cup squad. Like, where does that happen? Like we don't. That just shows how far ahead they are in this format of the game. And again, I'm not saying that there's no chance for the Proteas. Of course, especially the nature of T20 and the unpredictability of the wickets. If they get on a run, there's something can happen. But if you're just speaking broadly about India versus the Proteas, there's no contest from a skills perspective, from a personnel perspective. And like I say, to leave a player like Shubman Gill out, who was one of the top batters in T20 cricket for 18 months leading into the tournament before his form fell off, is crazy.
So our only chance there is to play them in New York.
It's not going to happen.
After all that.
It's not going to happen.
No, I know that. But that's where we play our exhibition matches from now on.
Right.
Anyone we want to play, we play in New York.
Exactly.
And it'll be a slow burn.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping for more of New York over the next 10 days, so I can kind of really enjoy that feeling of watching traditional cricket. And then I'll accept once we get to the West Indies, it could be 25 sixes. On certain of those pitches, it could be 25 sixes a match, and on others, it could be that collapse. It's been lekker chatting always.
It's been lekker
Ryan.
chatting. Let's end it on that note, on our New York dream flying high, and we'll catch up again as the tournament goes on.
And as you said, son of a bitch, eh?
Great having you.
Watch out in the crowd. It's coming your way. Bang, bang, 6-6. Fabulous innings, fabulous game.
Fantastic tournament.